This is your first time here, so we'll help you out. So you say your name first and make it
Karina. Kabir.
Ronnie Nirbe.
Ah, right. Thanks very much. Go ahead, all right. I'm just really happy to be here. And you know, like the saying goes, whenever we have 2 or 3 people in one place, then it means that our ancestors are here. And so before I get into this presentation, you know, it's just my style that I like to sing a song that gives praise to our ancestors, because our ancestors were the ones who made sure that our culture, our heritage lives on, okay? And so I always like to start my functions with, you know, a sacred song that is called Kato Venerable Kato. And this song is very special, it's sacred, because what the composer is saying is, okay, so we have our ancestral beliefs, right? We have our ancestral beliefs, but is it true? How do I know it is true? So the intelligence of our ancestors come out in this particular song. So I'll just sing a couple of verses and then we'll get into the presentation. How about that, all right? So that I can hear from you, so that I can get the answer I'm asking, the answer that I need from you at this particular time. So, now that we've actually started, so, well, when you look at this particular slide, you see a lot of our artists, you know. Right here, there is Don Justo. He actually recorded a lot of songs in the 60s and 70s. Aurelio Martinez, have you guys heard about Aurelio? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of our masters. He composes Caranda music. He has about 3 or 4 or 5 CDs out, and he tours all over the world. You know, Junior Aranda, he's no longer with us, but he's also one of our most prolific composers. Paul Labor, probably haven't heard of him, but he's also one of our masters. He composes songs. He's composed a lot of songs that are some of my favorites. Len Cayetano, maybe you've heard of him. Len Cayetano is also a painter. He's a master painter, but also he's one of our innovators in music as well. So when you look at all of these, when you look at this J.Palacio, you must have heard of him, right? J.Palacio, right? He's our genius and was a really good friend of mine. So, you know, what I'm trying to portray here is that the Garifuna people are very, very musical people, okay? And, you know, music has always been an integral part of the Garifuna culture. You know, I can't imagine us not living life without music, you know, and that's reflected in the different types of music that, you know, that we actually have in our heritage. You know, we have lots of different types that we're going to talk about a little bit later. And, you know, what are some of the themes in our songs? Well, the Garifuna people sing about a lot of things that probably other cultures don't sing about. For example, we like to sing about death. And it sounds a little bit morbid, right? But we're going to understand why that is the case. And when we sing about death, it's not always sad. We sing about death and we're dancing to it, which is a little bit weird for a Garifuna people. But you know, it's one of the nuances of our culture. Tribulations, you know. We're a people who actually, you know, left Saint Vincent under pretty bad circumstances. So we're always struggling. We're always trying to find ourselves. You know? And then, of course, we had to move on, right? So a lot of our songs are about hope as well. So our songs reflect Garifuna life, you know, the good, the bad, our dreams, our aspirations. So, you know, we can't really understand why music is so important to Garifuna people without understanding our history. So, I will talk briefly about our history and so that we can get a better understanding of why we act the way we act, why we behave the way we behave, why we believe what we believe. You know? So, Yurume, right? So what does Yurume stand for in English? Anybody?
Saint Vincent.
Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, that's
And the
correct.
Grenadines.
Right. So, you know, it's, I believe it's an archipelago of islands in the Grenadines. So this is where Garifuna people are originally from, okay? So, you know, our time in Saint Vincent as a people was very, very short. We had a lot of trouble in Saint Vincent. We fought a lot with the British. There was a lot of conflict. It was a big mess there. And, you know, our poet, Len Cayetano, expresses how Saint Vincent is to us in his poem, The Struggle Goes On. How many of you have heard of Len Cayetano? Yes, the younger ones are going to get introduced to him a little bit. But just think about what he said. You know, what I'm saying here in a little bit of a dry manner is that we had short-lived happiness when the Garifuna nation was born, where I was fighting. But Len Cayetano is a little bit more eloquent than me. And so what he's saying is, Saint Vincent, 18th century, an all but lifeless thing drifting in time and space. I chanced upon Jerome. A new beginning and a new set of footsteps, retraceable to the upper branches of the Amazon. Africa grafted upon Amerindian stock because, we were a mixture, or are a mixture of African and Indian, Arawak and Caribbean. So the point is saying Africa grafted upon Amerindian stock. I felt my roots grasp firm and deep in Jurume's soil. Whence do I, life and a new tomorrow? The man came, and when he says the man, he's referring to the British folks who kicked us out. I stood my ground, the man returned, and yet again, Satuye fell. Satuye is our leader, a paramount chief, and so did I. Jurume was no longer mine, nor I Jurume now. It's a very, very, very beautiful stanza of his poem, The Struggle Goes On. It's one of my favorites. Okay? So Jurume was a very, very, we had a short honeymoon, like I like to say. We were just, the Garifuna people flourished there for just a short period of time. Okay? And then, our paramount chief got killed. And when Joycelyn and I went to Jurume, we actually went to Dorsetshire Hill, where Satuye was actually killed. And there is the obelisk, the base of the obelisk that was actually built in his honor. So again, Jurume, it's a sacred place for Garifuna people. Okay, it's where we had a short honeymoon, and it's a place that is dear to our hearts. And then Baliceaux. Have you heard of Baliceaux? Well, Baliceaux is like a burial ground for Garifuna people. So when they kicked us out of Jurume, Baliceaux was like a staging area for us. Basically, when Joyce and I went there 15 years ago, there are literally bones of our ancestors here. Nobody lives here in this particular island. Okay? And so, could you imagine thousands of Garifuna people on this particular island? Okay, and they were kicked out of their homes, and they were here for I'm not sure how long. But this is another sacred place for Garifuna people, Baliceaux. So please remember Baliceaux. It's not talked about a lot. Because I think Garifuna people tend to deal with their struggles by not talking about things that are really bad. Okay? So, Baliceaux. And then, after Baliceaux, just imagine the Garifuna people were boarded on several battleships and shipped across the Atlantic to Roatan, Honduras. Now, this is a nice piece done by my brother-in-law, J.Palacio. And as you can see here, the Garifuna people were being boarded, and the battleships were out farther in the deep. And so these people were rounded up and actually put in these boats and then sent to Roatan, Honduras. Now, I was in Roatan a few weeks ago, and to me this is a very, very sacred place, because what it is a portal to our new freedom. Roatan is not talked about a lot, just like Baliceaux was not talked about a lot. But this particular place is a sacred place for Garifuna people, because this is where, from Saint Vincent, the Garifuna people actually came. So we took a couple of shots. Look how beautiful Baliceaux is. It almost looks like Saint Vincent. Roatan. Almost looks like Saint Vincent. Very, very beautiful. Very green. Very rich. Okay? And then in Punta Gorda, Roatan, it's a village where, it's the first village where Garifuna people actually settled. when they got to Roatan. So remember Punta Gorda, I'm from Punta Gorda, Belize, but this is a different one. And there's an obelisk in Saturia's honor there as well. Okay. So again, remember this triad, right? Eurome, Baliceaux, Roatan, Honduras. And I look at Roatan as a special place because it represents something new, a new freedom. So when we think about these three places, you know, could you imagine being kicked out of your homes, right? You left your friends behind, some of your folks were killed. You get to a new place, you don't find yourself, and so some moved on to Nicaragua, Belize, Guatemala, all amid suspicion. Okay, but it wasn't all that bad, right? Because what came from this experience was Garifuna people had to live within themselves. They had to dig deep within their souls to remember who they are. Put their organizational structures together, their homes, the way they build their homes. They had to hold on to their heritage. They had nobody to talk to. They were in these isolated villages. Recently, my wife and I went up to Miami in the hinterlands of Honduras. And I was pleased to see these people, young kids like you, speaking Garifuna. It was just awesome to see 2-year-old, 3-year-old speaking to me Garifuna. I was just struggling to speak Garifuna. And they looked just like me. I saw them. I saw myself when I looked at these kids. Okay? And the similarity in culture is astounding. You know? Just imagine, a couple hundred years ago, you know, the culture is still alive in those places. So it wasn't all bad. So what came out of this tragedy is what a famous psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, calls tragic optimism. What does tragic optimism mean? Tragic optimism means that you could have gone through hell, right? Pain, death, remorse. Don't you think that those people who ended up in Roatan had some guilt because they were alive and they probably felt that some of their loved ones should have survived? How about the ones who did not make it in the book? You know, so if you look at our songs represent who we are as a people. So, you know, we just don't sing because we want to have a good time. You know, just imagine in those villages, right? You communicated news through songs. You know, social control. If your girlfriend left you or your boyfriend left you, you say, I just sung a song. And Garifuna people don't call names in their songs. We're very discreet. But they take the strategy that you know exactly who you are. And everybody knows who you are. So they don't call names. They're not so scandalous, but everybody knows who you are. Bringing a case of perceived injustice to the community, there's this concept of going to the Gurigo, right? So the community becomes judge and jury. So you go and you make your case to the community and you leave it right there. And the community decides if you are right or wrong. It's a very, very beautiful thing. Part of the thing here, because I'm a little bit of a weirdo, I love our spiritual music. You know, this is what some of the philosophers call it articulates our existential core. Who we are as a people, what we believe, what makes us tick. Could you imagine after Saint Vincent, right? When we got to Roatan, we didn't know anybody. How do we kind of deal with this whole aspect of losing so many people in Saint Vincent and Baliceaux? Those who died. One of our beliefs is that they did not really die. That they're right here with us right now. And I think that belief made Garifuna people able to move on. Because they say, okay, so my mom got killed, or my entire family got killed. But I know that they're around somewhere. They're not really, they're still here with us. Okay, so existential core cosmology. Consolation. When I listen to Paranda, for example, if I'm a little bit blue, it picks me up, you know. Hope, I mentioned, you know, connection to infinite, whatever you want to call it, God, things like that. And so, as you can see, our musical heritage really reflects who we are as Garifuna people. And then, of course, we have, you know, we party as well. You know, Garifuna people like to dance, and so it's not all sad. Okay, but I wanted to mention in particular that songs mean a lot to Garifuna people. We don't just sing to party, although party is one of the components, right? Party is one of the components, right? So, how do we know, what's the evidence that, you know, music is an integral part of our society? Well, here's evidence. We have an impressive number of Garifuna composers. The most famous one, perhaps, is J.Palacio, because even the younger ones know J.Palacio. But there are others, you know? There are others, and who helped to create and build the music. Leonard, for example, in Tangriga. You know Leonard?
No, I just talking about the Lambi.
Yeah, so she's very. Mohabab Flores.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's touring with the collective right now. And then there are others. And this is a short list. I fell in love with Libaya Marasa. I got a CD with Libaya Marasa. Yeah, Libaya Marasa and the old man Marasa, the old Marasa. If you listen to their music, it has a groove, but a lot of it is about sadness. There's one that Libaya Marasa is singing about death. But it's very, very beautiful. And there's this concept of making a migration, Naguya, or Aguya Nubusho. My mother is moving to a different place. Again, this whole concept that, you know, Garifuna people move to a different place. They are transitioning somewhere else. And that comes out in music. So, I don't have anything more complex than this, but I think that this kind of gives us a picture, right? We have lots of people. Do you know any others who I don't have on this list?
I could mention one that I really like is Figaga.
Figaga.
Hernan Williams.
Exactly.
Figaga, yeah.
Yes, he's awesome. So, and if we think really hard, this list can grow very, very, very quickly. Okay? So, and then another piece of evidence is we have all of these different genres. So can anybody tell me about Abaya Mahani? What in our tradition, not just to perform, you know, for entertainment or for tourists. Can anybody tell me when Abaya Mahani is actually performed, like in our tradition? Does anybody know? This is when women actually get together and they sing, right? Do they do this just like around Christmas time?
I'm not sure, but it's when they sing it with their ancestors.
That's quite possible. That's quite possible. I'm probing here because, yes? When they're what? Chores? That's another possibility. And the reason both are probably correct is that Abaya Mahani is done as a form of forging solidarity. And the holding of the hands is significant in that, you know, I'm for you, you're for me. I'm for you, you're for me. And it's a dominant theme, although not expressed in Garifuna, Garifuna heritage. Arumahani is similar to Abaya Mahani, except that it's sung by men. But again, it's gestured. And again, just imagine being in the hinterlands of Honduras or Belize and a bunch of guys get together and they're working, or there's trouble in the village, somebody dies, for example. That aroma honey provides a sense of peace. Chumba, well, Chumba Gunjay, Kulungu, think these are more familiar. You know, does anybody want to contribute to what Chumba is? No, actually, no. That's a very excellent question. That's an excellent question. I like the question because it means I have somebody's paying attention. Yeah, it's not like Jankuno. This is. Does anybody want to do a quick portrayal of what Chumba is? Basically, what it is that the dancer mimics some daily mundane activity. Yeah, like for example, sweeping the house, for example. Yeah. So, but they exaggerate the action, so it's not kind of a boring kind of thing. It's fun. Paranda, one of my favorites. And, one of the things I want to clarify about Paranda is that, Paranda in its original definition is guitar song. Basically, when I was growing up in PG, for example, I recall Paul Nabor literally going house to house. Paranda, in its most traditional form, is basically what you're doing is you're spreading news. News about maybe a personal hurt, but one that I recall most is when one of Paul Labor's best friends actually got killed. Three of them, Paul Labor and two other friends were drinking, and something happened, and one of the friends killed another friend, and he witnessed this murder. And when somebody got killed in PG in the 70s, it was a big deal. It never happened, and even when it happens today, people freak out. And I recall Paul Labor visiting our home and singing the song, Mafiegi Dinatia, La La La. And I recorded that song because I recall the song is very beautiful, very simple, but it articulates the pain, the shock of losing a loved one. And when he performed it with just the guitar. He was singing, and somebody else was singing altos, for example. There was no maracas, no drums. So, the introduction of the drums in Paranda is a little bit new, although it has become a standard. But Paranda, in the traditional form, is you have the parandero playing the guitar. Okay. Punta, who doesn't know about Punta? Yeah. Sandai, I've never seen Sandai perform. This is a dance usually done by men. Has anybody seen Sandai perform?
Actually, we saw it when the Ballet Folklorico Garifuna came.
Oh, really?
Last 2 times. They had an act with the samba, yeah. And they're coming back in September, thank God.
I may have missed it then. Yeah. Now, you asked about Wanaraga. Now, this is where you have the mask. Yeah, and the drummer has to basically keep up with what the dancer is actually doing. And so there's a communication between the dancer and the drummers. It's very, very beautiful. Fortunately, in the along the lines of preservation, in Danriga right now, they actually have a Wanaraga festival around Christmas time, where you have young kids now learning to play and dance Wanaraga, and it's really beautiful to watch. So we talked about the history of our music, the types of dances, the types of songs, the different genres. Would you agree that we have a very rich musical history? Yeah. And then I also talked about how this music came about, right? And this is just my own theory, but I firmly believe it, that when we look at the triads, right, these tragic tribes, our sacred places, Yurume, Baliceaux, Roatan. And for people, for Garifuna people to have survived, they had to dig deep within themselves. They had to find ways to console themselves. They had to be able to come to terms with death, dying. They had to come to terms with their own, they didn't have priests in those days, right? So they had to come to terms with those things. So it's still going on now, but what about innovation? Do you think that our music is evolving? What do you think? Do you think it's changing? You don't think so? Well, how about you? Do you think our music is changing?
No.
You don't think so?
I think so. I think Super G and Lloyd and Reckless and them, these youngsters have brought the traditional punta music to a higher level that they call punta rock, and it's attracting more and more youngsters back into the culture to some degree.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
Well, let's look at some of the evidence, right? Well, you mentioned punta rock. Right, so Len Cayetano is one of our innovators. What I like about Pen is that he plays whatever he wants to play, he innovates, he doesn't hold on to traditions, and in a beautiful way, he keeps the fundamentals. You know that it's Garifuna music that he's doing. So Pen, one of our masters. And then, when you really listen keenly to music from Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, we infuse reggae, things like that, different rhythms, even if it's a little bit subtle. And then a lot of the guys, including people like Lebaya Marasa, are using modern studios, synthesizers to make the music sound a little bit richer. And then, you should research this. I know some of you are not old enough to remember, but Justo Flores, I have extremely high regard for Justo Flores. He actually recorded a lot of Garifuna songs in reggae format, ballads, and regarding instrumental, what do you think? Do you think that Garifuna people play instrumental music? What do you think? You do? Well, actually, not quite. It doesn't, it's not a part of our Garifuna soul. It's changing though. And, who noted this is an ethnomusicologist, Emery Whipple. He's no longer with us, but Emery Whipple actually studied Garifuna music in Punta Gorda, Belize. He actually taught me in high school. And I was reading his master's thesis, and one of the things he observed was that Garifuna people don't play instrumental music. For example, it would be rare for you to hear a recording of just drums or just guitar. Yeah, it's kind of weird for Garifuna people. We have to sing along and things like that. Yeah, so instrumental music is not something that is part of our psyche, it seems. But it's actually changing. Bill Cayetano, a musician who is really, really good, has actually done a few CDs, released a few CDs with just instrumental music. But again, that's innovation, and I'm not quite sure how Garifuna people are responding to it. I think that part of our soul is, we listen to lyrics, we want to move a little bit, and so instrumental doesn't, instrumental music is not something that Garifuna people are particularly used to. But of course, we're more exposed and living in places like New York and Los Angeles and so on, and so getting more exposed to different types of music. So, what about preservation? Why are we here? Why is it that Cheryl and Ronnie have invested so much in time and energy in doing this sort of thing? Why are other groups doing similar things? You know, I think it's because we want to hold on to our heritage. For me, when I went to college at DePaul University, I felt extremely strange. There I was, coming from Belize, and you know, I was not a Native American, not a Black American, not an African, not a Jamaican. And so I went through a bit of an identity crisis to figure out, well, who am I? Yeah, I'm Belizean, but you know, who am I really? And so it was then that I recalled interactions and maybe master classes from people like Len Cayetano, with whom I stayed when I was in high school. That at the end of the day, I'm a Garifuna man. And I'm very proud of it. You know. And so, over 15 years ago, I actually started to figure out how I could make a small contribution to preserve our culture. And so, after my visit to Saint Vincent, I felt a sense of guilt and obligation as well, because when I visited Baliceaux, I just felt that something had to be done to preserve our heritage. So, I just want to talk a little bit about one of the projects that I did. I just released a CD that is pretty classical, traditional, and you know, what I try to do with the CD is to actually bring out the different dominant themes in our songs. For example, our ancestors. It's an integral part of Garifuna life. Who we are, what makes us tick. I would argue has made us survive this long as well. And this piece was done by artist J.Palacio, and it depicts a part of the Dugu ceremony called Adugahati. So this is where, as you can see here, fishermen coming from sea with seafood offering for the ancestors. And you have the folks playing the drums. Probably can't make it out really well, but the buye with the maracas, the meeting the fishermen. Okay, so there are several songs that just deal with this particular concept, with this particular theme. Okay, yeah. So just quickly, if we're serious about preservation, then we have to do stuff like this. We have to actually capture these songs so that 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 200 years from now, you know, people who are interested in studying Garifuna or people with Garifuna roots can go back, and if they go to Juilliard School of Music, they can figure out how it used to be played. You know, yeah. So this is what we have to do, because when we do this sort of stuff, then preservation becomes something that is real, that is serious. Right? 200 years from now, your kid studying piano would be able to play this, right? Yeah. So. And you know, there are other, along the same lines. One of the things that I also want to mention briefly is that I got to appreciate our Spanish heritage a lot more when I went to Roatan. You know, I never really thought about how significant Honduras is in our culture, but again, we got there from Baliceaux. So Garifuna people first ended up in Central America using Baliceaux as a portal. So that is where we had our new freedom. this is where it all began. This is where the reinvention of Garifuna, and I would argue the preservation of Garifuna actually began. Okay? So, my good friend Ronnie helped me to translate from Garifuna to Spanish. So, I will be releasing, hopefully it won't take me 15 years to do this. You know, I will release a songbook, you know, with all of the lyrics in Garifuna. So people in Belize who speak English, or only English, will understand what the lyrics mean. And then people who speak Spanish in Honduras, do you know that we have like 40 Garifuna, over 40 Garifuna villages in Honduras? Well, in Belize there were 4 or 5. I mean, so our culture in terms of preservation, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua are very important, and so we can't forget our brothers and sisters there. So I just wanted to mention that. And I mentioned that before. Now, look at this. This is Barranco in Belize. This is when the Pixwan and J.Palacio died. And I attended the funeral, I had never seen anything like this, where I didn't know that Barranco could hold so many people. Garifuna men don't cry very easily, but Garifuna men were crying like babies. Okay? And again, you know, when it comes to death, we have a lot of songs about that particular theme. And what is strange, a nuance of the Garifuna culture, is that it's not morbid. We rock to these songs. We're rocking, right? But you listen to the lyrics and it's like, oh my God, what are you saying? Yeah, so and I would argue that only Garifuna people would not look at this particular movement as really, really sad. Okay, and yeah, it just really, I think, articulates who we are. It has been something that we've had to deal with. You know, when you think about Baliceaux, when you think about Saint Vincent, when you think about when we got to Roatan, some people probably were so tired they didn't make it. You know? And so I think that this is something that we, maybe in psychological terms, we're confronting our fears. You know? Yeah, so these songs are very, very beautiful, and they reflect who we are and how we think about death as well.